You're listening to Agreeable Disagreements by Camron and Andrew. Do you know what the Twin Towers and the footage of this episode have in common? A bunch of things happened, and now it's gone. We ran into some technical glitches, and a lot of what we originally recorded was either lost or we decided to cut because we rambled on for 2 hours and didn't get to the second topic. Just letting you know now, because if you're like me, you're probably looking at that time code and going, wow, this is a significantly shorter episode. They must have gotten their act together. We did not. We did not get our act together. Not even a little bit. So enjoy this episode that was originally 2.5 hours long and is now like 55 minutes. Thank you for listening. So Andrew, I have a proposition for you.
Okay. I
would like to start selling shoes. It's a new business venture that I got into. I teach a lot of kids who are big into shoes, and so I realize the amount of demand there are for fancy shoes, and so I would like to sell you my first pair. They're called Stockford shoes. They'll have a big S on the side, not to be confused with the other name brand that has a big S on the side. The typical retail value of these shoes is going to be about $400, but I will give you, Andrew, a friendly discount on the very first pair, and have you pay $9,000.
Sold. Immediately. Wait, what color are they?
Whatever color you want them to be. Let's say gold. Let's just start there. Solid gold.
Perfect.
Right. They won't even be gilded in gold. It'll just be...
It's just gold like pleather.
Macrame, I was thinking.
What is macrame?
That's a good question.
I always thought macrame was like the macaroni art. Because I know that has like some weird name.
Well, it would make a terrible shoe. It is a form of textile production using knotting rather than weaving or knitting techniques.
Okay.
However, macrame shoes...
So it's like crochet.
Kind of. Macrame shoes are a thing.
I need you to drop a picture of that in the chat because I, A, don't know what macrame is, and B, can't imagine how shoes would be made that way.
Okay, here you go. So, while you're looking it up, it's basically, instead of knitting with, like, sticks, it looks like if you were to just tie a bunch of knots.
Okay.
To get the threads to stay together.
Isn't that... Oh, I guess if you're not using sticks, then it's not... Or needles, I think is what they're actually called.
Well, and even then, knitting is still a form of... I guess you could say still a form of weaving because you're looping them together. And if you pull on one strand, it can all come undone. Whereas macrame, it looks like you're going to have to undo thousands of knots.
I thought that was what, like, I was thinking of crochet. If you, like,
oh my gosh,
pull on one thread. This is not important. Also, we should clue our listeners into the meta joke that we were making and then completely forgot about. Or not, which I think would be objectively funnier.
No, I think at this point we owe it to them. If they've stuck around this long, they need to know what the heck we're talking about.
Okay. We're talking about Trump's shoes. The first person who bought them purchased them for $9,000. And I think they're going for around $400 now. But here's the interesting thing is I saw, granted, this is on Reddit. So I don't know.
So you know it's trustworthy.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've never been wildly wrong on an episode before.
It's okay. Keep going.
Anyway, so I saw on Reddit that somebody like looked up basically like the money trail from the company who's like manufacturing the shoes and Trump, and the money went through two companies. One, it was like CIC Industries, and the other was like 45 something. I don't remember the names of it, but CIC stands for Commander in Chief, and 45 obviously means
he's number 45.
Yeah, the 45th president. So it went through 2 Trump shell companies, and then they looked up like the address of, I think it was the 45 company. And it was like a shack in a strip mall parking lot in Wyoming.
Wow. So if this is like even a quarter, like 25% true, which it may not be, it may be 0, it may be 100.
I mean, I know that both of those companies are real shell companies.
But I mean, what I'm trying to say is, even if it's like 25% true, that's sketchy.
I mean, yeah, of course it is. He's got a lot of legal bills. I don't know if you I did heard about that.
Yeah, he got indicted. Or not indicted, he was found guilty, so he's got to pay $355 million.
Yeah, on top of what was the E. Jean Carroll one?
Oh, I don't know.
I think that was like 30-something million.
I tell you what, I literally, like the day before the shoes were announced, I literally had a conversation with Alyssa where I said, I really don't like it, but if Nikki Haley doesn't pull through, and the fact that we are yet to see any other real third-party candidates, don't come at me with Kennedy.
I'm not going to. That's not...
I was thinking, like, I don't know what my other options would be, and I might have to come to terms with possibly voting for Trump in the election. Because, I mean, I don't like him.
Cameron.
But financially speaking, the economy was better, and my finances as a grad student who was making like no money were better than, I feel like my money went further. Now, that I'm still undecided. I'm not saying I'm going to, but it's something I'm considering, because when I look at the base of how is my life under Biden and how is my life under Trump, I feel like Trump, aside from his rhetoric, aside from his Twitter page.
Oh, I'm fully willing to put those aside. I would have argue the same like incredulous reaction that you prefer his policies.
Oh, I mean, not all of them, but I would. There's a lot that I do agree with. There's a lot that I disagree with, but what I'm trying to get at is the day after I had this conversation with Alyssa where I'm thinking like I might have to vote for Trump. The next day he releases these shoes and I'm like, yeah, one more thing. Now, shoes are not a reason to not vote for someone, but
no. And honestly though, I would love to talk to the person where it's like, okay, that's the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Right. It's just like the day after I say I might have to look past all of his antics and vote for him, he does more antics.
Yeah. I don't want to, spoiler alert. There's going to be more antics.
Would you prefer antics or would you prefer malarkey?
Define malarkey.
I would like to see President Biden define malarkey.
I mean, I think he probably could.
Let's see if he has.
Look, I took an Irish language class, and I don't even know the definition of malarkey.
I'll just take the Biden part out of that Google search and let's see. Malarkey definition. Meaningless talk, nonsense.
Okay.
So then all of politics is malarkey.
I feel like that was low-hanging fruit.
95%. Who cares? Low-hanging fruit is great, man. I don't know why it gets such a bad rap.
I mean...
It's so easy to get.
Okay. I don't know how to respond to that.
Yeah, okay. Well, welcome to Agreeable Disagreements. I'm Cameron.
That's my line.
This is Andrew. It is your line. Go ahead. Okay.
Welcome to Agreeable Disagreements. It is a show where friends with differing ideologies talk about politics.
I'm Cameron, and this is Andrew.
As far as you
And
know.
as far as you know, yeah, that's true. I know, but the listeners might not.
I'm pretty sure all of the listeners we have are just people we know.
Yeah, and I think it's mostly people you know, too.
I don't know. That'd be interesting. Hey, everyone who is listening right now, do us a favor and go follow us on Instagram and
Yes.
Facebook, and then we can actually see who our listeners are.
Or text us if you're listening.
Please don't do that.
Andrew's phone number is no, I'm joking.
555-5555-5555. Is that the right amount of numbers?
It should be 9 fives. No, 10 fives. It should be 10 fives. Did you do 10 fives?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
That's why I was asking.
Okay. Well, anyway,
just type in 5 until you get it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, we wanted to talk today about two things, one of which is a current event and one of which is more philosophical. And in our pre-discussion chat, we decided to go with the philosophical chat first. So we're going to talk about taxes in general. And then after
I thought
that,
you said Texas.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding.
I know you're kidding, because we had an ongoing conversation about like what we wanted to bring up over text. So it'd be really weird if you decided, yeah, I don't know how to feel about income Texas, you know?
Yeah. Texas is entering a new era, and I don't know how to feel about the incoming persona. Okay.
You're reaching. Right, see,
yeah.
That's the thing with low-hanging fruit. You don't have to reach.
Yeah.
The other thing that we're going to talk about, if you want to stick around or skip forward, please don't, is a recent Alabama court ruling that a lot of people are interpreting as defining embryos as people, which I would say, without getting into it, because I want to save it for when we get to that point, I think that's a misleading headline, personally.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say that the headline isn't representative of the full story, but it very much, I mean, the decision very much did define embryos as people, but there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, it's nuanced.
Which we'll get in.
It's got a lot of shades of gray. Hey, yeah, so this is awkward. You remember at the beginning how I told you we didn't get to everything? Yeah, this is what we didn't get to. So if you are interested in the Alabama court case about whether or not embryos count as children and the ramifications of said ruling, we don't get to it here. So stick around for more tax talk. That's all it's going to be. But it's good. It's good tax talk. I'm just going to let us get back to the podcast now. All right, so let's talk about taxes. I hate them because I like money and paying for things myself, not the government paying for them. How do you feel about taxes?
I mean, I don't enjoy paying them, but I think that they are necessary.
Sure. So one of the things that I have to teach when we do basic civics in my class is the purpose of and reasons behind taxes. And we came up with this. The reason I wanted to talk to you about it is because in my class, we're talking about the American Revolution right now. And so taxes are a big thing. There's the whole taxation without representation. They were boycotting taxes. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different levies and acts that are passed during that road to Revolutionary War. And I had to explain to fifth graders what taxes are, how they're collected, and why we use them. And it really got me thinking about tax philosophy and where I stand. Because on one hand, I think taxes are terrible because I lose around a third of my paycheck to taxes.
Yeah, I'd say that's around the amount that I lose from mine as well.
Most people pay 25 to 35% of their income in taxes, the average person, right?
Yeah. What I will say is I am before I think it was 2017 or no. before Trump's tax plan went into effect, I was receiving significantly more in my tax refund.
See, but that just means that your taxes were lowered.
No, because
If
I
you're
didn't
receiving,
change my filing.
oh wait, so okay, so hold on. If you're paying, if you're receiving less in your tax refund,
Yeah,
that means
I
you're,
actually don't receive a tax refund anymore.
yeah, it depends on how much you make and it depends on the code for the year. But
Right.
okay. First of all, I have a
All
problem
of
with,
that stuff more or less didn't really change, at least not enough to me going from, I think I was normally getting like, depending on the year, like $300 to $800 in my tax refund. And then I forget what the year was that it started. I want to say like 2018, or it might have been 2017. But since then, I've been owing more taxes because I still haven't refiled. I have gotten, some raises since then. This year, I'm probably going to actually no. Oregon's getting uh, it's not a refund, but it's like a surplus. But
and that's interesting because, I mean, even if you consider the fact that I've jumped up tax brackets from being a poor graduate student who was making less than $15,000 a year to a teacher and then a dual income family, because my wife
right,
also works, um, I would say that we are receiving significantly less in our refund under Biden than we did under Trump.
okay.
And
Uh,
yeah,
I'm guessing that has to do with Oregon relying primarily on income and property tax.
yes, yeah, and then that's one of the things that we wanted to touch on too is what kind of taxes do we like, do we not like? Really quick though, I wanted to say I hate the fact that we even have to go through a filing and the fact that we
Yeah,
have to worry about tax refunds because if I don't pay all of my taxes, which happened to me last year, right? We jumped up in income, but my job has we had issues with how we were withholding our taxes, and we ended up
mm-hmm.
owing like $4,000. And part of that was the withholding amount was wrong, and part of
Right,
that was the fact that I received some student loan aid that took me up a bracket. Because it counted as taxable income, even though I didn't see a penny of it
yeah,
through AmeriCorps. And so um, we owed like $4,000, and I have to pay interest on that. Okay, the government owes me money; they don't have to pay me interest on it.
wait, are you saying if they owe you money, or you're
That's what a
saying they
refund is.
do?
A refund is saying, and this year they do. This year I am getting a return because we changed our withholdings and we made sure that we were in that in the right bracket. But
Right,
if I owe the government money, they charge me penalties and they charge me interest. If the
right.
government owes me money, I get neither of those things.
Well, I do think that it's, I mean, you're the one filling out your, what is it, the I-9? Is that the one where it's like all of the exemptions that you,
1099,
1099.
I think. I don't
Yeah,
actually know. I'm
that
not a tax
sounds,
expert. I just know I go to a website and they do it for me.
yeah, that sounds about right. I meant the 1099 thing. But, uh, yeah, I also, so I have a lot of friends in
1040.
the
It's a
UK.
1040.
Oh, 1040. Okay. Well, in any case,
Yeah.
I mean, that's still kind of on you. If you, mark down not enough exemptions and then
Sure.
you end up getting a refund later. But, it's an incredibly confusing form for, to expect just, your average layperson to be able to understand, like, okay,
Right.
I don't need to check this, but also the penalties if I get this wrong are
Pretty
potentially
severe.
pretty severe. But I have a bunch of friends in the UK, and we were talking a couple weeks ago about like their tax system, and the Americans, and like it's like half of us are Americans, half of us are from the UK.
Like a group chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's I'd say about 10 of us in
Okay.
total. But the Americans were like talking about, all of the just how frustrating it is to file taxes and everything, and the Brits were like, oh, we just get like the government just sends us like, hey, here's how much you owe, like we did the work for you, which is a better system, regardless of any other issues with taxes. Why is our system I'm stealing this from a comedian, and I don't remember who it was, but they put it like the tax system is like the government tells you, okay, you owe us some money, and then we're like, how much? And then the government says, I don't know, guess. But if you get it wrong, then we'll throw you in jail. And
it's a TikTok.
Yeah. I wish I could remember the comedian's name, but it's like they have all of that information, and then the kicker is that it's like, oh, don't worry, you can do it yourself. It's really easy. There's you can use TurboTax for free, but when you search TurboTax on Google, it's incredibly hard to find the actual free version that you can use. And none of this needs to be that hard.
Well, and so other countries too, the only reason you have to file is if you have unreported income, like if you're freelancing or, non-contracted work kind of stuff.
Right.
And they just automatically take the right amount, and then there's no need to file whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what it should be. But part of the reason why it's so complicated in the United States, there's been a lot of studies that came out in the last few years, because so many people are paying attention to this. And a lot of the theories boil down to two things. First is lobbying. TurboTax, H&R Block, and a couple other companies have spent billions of dollars lobbying and
certainly
lobbying with the government to make them the primary source of taxes and to suppress the information that you can file for free. And because of that attention, the IRS is making it easier. You can actually go to their website, and if you make less than $79,000 a year, they'll match you with a website or a company that will file your taxes for free.
Well, I mean, you can still get TurboTax does have a program that's available for everybody. It's just very hard to find because of the SROs or search
SEO.
return SEO,
search engine optimization. Now, the other reason it's so complicated, and you're not going to like this answer because we've talked about this in the past, but there's a lot of criticisms that boil down to the mere existence of the IRS at the size that it is. Because, so the argument then is that it's so complicated and we make people do it because it gives all of the IRS justification to have as many people employed as they do. So we're comparing the income tax rates, with the overall tax burden between three states, because Washington and Tennessee, neither one of them have income taxes, but their overall tax burdens are significantly different. However, Washington and Oregon, sales tax, no income tax. Oregon is the opposite. No sales tax, yes income tax. And their overall tax rates are pretty similar. In Washington, your tax burden is about 10.7. In Oregon, it's 10.8. And they are ranked 30 and 31, respectively.
Right. We also have a pretty substantial property tax, too, though. Those
And
are
I think,
the two ways that Oregon gains its tax revenue. And I don't know what the distribution is there, but I know or I'm pretty sure that our property taxes are comparatively high
yeah,
to other
to
states.
Tennessee. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Washington, I know, also has a pretty high property tax. And so I think they're both making up for the tax that they are missing there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's fair. And I think, I mean, that's, I've talked to a couple since since you proposed this, topic, I've talked to a couple people who are a lot more knowledgeable than I am about taxes. And it seems to be that, like we've discussed, there's flaws with sales tax, there's flaws with income tax, there are flaws with property tax. I'm not nearly as informed about property tax, but the best system seems to be, and the most equitable system seems to be some mixture of the three of those, which if Oregon wanted to lower income tax and lower property tax and introduce a sales tax, I think that I don't necessarily have a problem with that.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's in some way we have to generate this revenue. We should be doing what we can to make sure that it's equitable, which is different than being equal, like flat tax.
Sure.
But
Interesting you bring that up because Indiana's income tax is a flat tax.
yeah.
Whereas Oregon's
I remember
is
you
tiered.
talking about a flat tax back in AP Gov.
Oh man, that was just because Herman Cain was running with his 999 plan, where everyone pays 9% income, 9% sales, and 9% corporate tax or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'll be honest. I think flat taxes are great.
Okay.
Because
why does that not surprise me?
Well, here's the thing, right? If I make $10,000, then in Indiana, I'd be paying $3,115 in taxes. No, sorry, 300. Wait, 10,000 times point. Nope, hold on, my calculator's malfunctioning and I can't do simple math. I'd be paying $315. If I made $10,000 a year, $315 of that is taxes, is income taxes here. But if I made $100,000 a year, that's 10 times more, right? It's very proportional. Whereas in a tiered system,
right? But
in a tiered system, right now I'd be paying. I think my effective tax rate is like 22%, just for federal income taxes because that's a tiered system.
Sure.
But if someone makes 4 times as much than me, they're paying way more than 4 times as much in taxes.
Yeah, as they should.
Because
it's about equity, not equality.
See, but
so 10% of somebody making $10,000 a year is much more of a burden, especially when you have incredibly high housing costs, which I know where I live are pretty high compared to almost anywhere else in the country. But I think the majority of the country is feeling, the effects of at least just, the rising cost of housing. Somebody who's making $100,000 a year, $10,000 is a huge chunk of change, but are they substantially worse off if they have, only $90,000 in their pocket at the end of the year?
Sure, but the problem with a tiered system is that it opens up more loopholes.
Yes, that are almost not exclusively, but pretty significantly taken advantage of by people in higher tax brackets.
100% accurate with that. However, here's the problem. The people who make those loopholes are all friends with or receiving money from those people. This is one of the things that I do really like about Donald Trump. And there's a Dave Chappelle bit where he talks about how Donald Trump was, one of the first people to really come out and say, yeah, I am using these loopholes to avoid taxes, but so is everyone else.
Yeah.
And I do got to say that I respect that candor in the sense of, it's a problem. I'm using it. And guess what? If you want to fix that problem, close the loopholes. But here's the thing. The issue is that these loopholes exist because the people who make these laws are benefiting from the loopholes themselves and are being paid money by other people who benefit from those loopholes.
That's how politics works, just in the most basic sense in America.
Right. And so when I see all these people running every election year, there are some people saying raise taxes, some people saying lower taxes. I rarely, if ever, see people talk about closing the tax loopholes.
You do see that. Well, it doesn't surprise me that you don't see that because you're not listening nearly as much to progressives.
AOC talks about it.
Definitely are saying that.
AOC talks about it. Bernie Sanders talks about it.
Yeah.
But Hillary Clinton's rather progressive, or at least she was when she ran for president. She was considered rather progressive. She didn't talk about and besides, she didn't really talk about closing those loopholes. And either way, there's talking about it and there's doing
it.
Also,
I don't think that that's true either. I think she did talk about it. I think maybe she shied away from it during the campaign because she knew that it would come back, to bite her in the ass when, the smear campaigns came out about her huge payment from, I think it was Lehman Brothers or something. I think it was a tactical move to not bring it up.
Sure.
But she definitely did talk about it when it wasn't, the prime campaigning season.
So here's the other problem though. There was one point where under the Obama administration where there was a supermajority in the Senate and a wide majority in the House, and they could have passed any laws that they wanted. Why didn't they close those tax loops?
What did they pass during that time?
Obamacare was the big one.
Yeah, I think that was during Obamacare, and I think that it was just a matter of priorities. But to your point that you're not hearing anyone talk about closing the loopholes, you absolutely are hearing one presidential candidate talk pretty frequently about expanding those loopholes.
In the sense that he wants to lower corporate taxes, yes. I don't know that I've heard Trump talk about making more or expanding the loopholes.
I'm pretty sure at one of his campaign events that I saw recently, and this is not the only time I've heard him say this, and I don't know what the actual quote is, but it definitely wasn't, he wasn't using legalese to cover his bases. So, it's hard to tell what he actually means. But he said something to the effect of, is like a donor dinner or something. And so he was talking to a bunch of, rich business owners, and he was saying that he was going to lower their taxes and make them a shitload of money, which I feel like you can parse, what exactly he means by that, but that
could mean two things. It could mean that, yes, he's going to open loopholes, but it could also mean that he's going to cut corporate taxes, which he did once before.
Yeah. I think that the way that he's I know that he lowered the tax rate, but I also think that the loopholes aren't a thing in themselves. They're exemptions and other ways to that certain entities that are granted them can lower their tax rate. So it's not like there's some, I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but I think they're kind of one and the same.
And, I'm not going to sit here and say that Trump was perfect on taxes. But I will say that we see a lot of talk about lowering taxes, and few people do it in a amount that makes much of a difference. We see a lot of talk about raising taxes, and I think taxes going up tends to be more visibly hurtful than taxes going down tends to be more visibly relieving. I don't see a lot of action followed through on it. And part of that is because, Sanders and Cortez. Okay. Yeah, because Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez, for example, who are big people talking about closing tax loopholes, to their credit, two people who I vehemently disagree on a lot of platforms, to their credit, they do talk about closing these loopholes quite a bit. But, they're only two people.
But it's not just them. They're just the only ones that I can name.
Yeah, but they're the ones who talk about it the most. And there's a lot of other people who do talk about it, but are receiving these donations from the people who are benefiting from these loopholes.
Yeah. I guess I think what I'm saying is the fact that politicians receive money from lobbyists and from PACs and, different entities, especially since, the Citizens United case made, that virtually unlimited. Everyone's doing it. Anyone who's not doing it would kind of be stupid to not do it because they wouldn't get elected. They wouldn't be able to, they would have no bargaining power. So I feel like that is, it's kind of a non sequitur because it's at least an even playing field.
Sure.
But I think in any case, politicians' primary responsibility is to represent the people that elected them. And if you're focused on the good of corporations rather than, actual people, I see a problem with that. And it seems to be that the issue is not so much, should taxes overall be higher or lower? It's who is getting these tax breaks. Because what I see most often is the people getting tax breaks are the corporations and the super rich who don't need the tax breaks. And every once in a while, the middle class or the, lower class will get thrown a bone, but ultimately their taxes are getting raised or at least not lowered to, again, an equitable rate.
So speaking of rates, I want to know for the average person, let's exclude people below the poverty line, and let's exclude, the top 1%, or let's even outside of the 1%, people making more than $150,000 a year, which in most states is going to afford you a decent quality of life.
Yeah.
What percentage of taxes would you say is proper? At what point does the range become, you think, too high? And I want to think about overall tax burden, right? Not just what's your income tax.
One individual, not
correct,
not a household that makes $150,000.
Correct. Well, I would count if they're married filing jointly. I would count that as the same thing.
But it's not, because
I
then
know
you're
it's not,
providing for two people.
but okay. Well, then let's say in general, an income could be a single person, could be a family,
Okay.
because we understand that we could make tax cuts or tax exemptions for like dependents and stuff like that. I'm saying overall, a general idea. What percent would you say is a fair tax, and what percent would you say is too high?
I feel like I do need more specifics, though, because the specifics kind of change it. So,
Okay.
I mean, if we're talking about an individual in the 1%, I know that we said that we're not even talking about them, but say we were, I'd say, let's do it like we did in the 50s and have them at a 50% income tax. As you go down, it gets more dicey. And especially, if you're talking about an individual versus a household, two people, with making $75,000 a year each, that's very different than one person making $150,000.
So let's use this number then. This is according to the Motley Fool, which is a finance research website. On average, 4-person families, so that's 2 parents, 2 kids, makes around, and this is some states where it's more, some states where it's less, about $114,000. And the median income for Americans between 45 and 64 who are going to have teenagers in the house is $90,750. So I feel like that's a pretty close range at a decent average for an average upper middle class family of 4.
See, I think that the term middle class to describe the median family, and I think median is a much better average to use than the mean, which is what we typically think of as the average, because the median, I think in this case, is somewhat displaying how the distribution is skewed.
Okay.
And if you think about, they're in the middle, so you could make the argument that they're middle class. However, when you look at the amount of money necessary to sustain, 4 people on $95,000 a year,
Mm-hmm.
that's not. I'm not going to say that that's not middle class. It's certainly not upper class, the way that I think it kind of sounds. So I think that basically one of the problems is that the middle class is shrinking. The people that are living closer to the poverty line are growing. The people that are, getting closer to the upper end of the socioeconomic ladder, I wouldn't say are necessarily growing in their numbers, but I think they're growing in their wealth. Which is
part of the problem part of the reason why the middle class is shrinking is because of higher tax rates, inflation.
Right. Higher tax rates for the middle class and the lower class, but not higher tax rates for the upper class, who are not increasing in numbers, they're increasing in wealth.
But both of the last 2 presidents have cut taxes for the middle class.
That's neither here nor there.
How so? Because it feels like that's a direct criticism of your argument.
Because we're talking about the philosophical argument, not about what is being done.
I see what
That's
you mean.
what I'm saying. Is I'm not making a defense for Obama. I'm not necessarily trying to criticize Trump, other than just to use him as an example for what one side advocates, because while not everyone on the Republican side agrees with Trump, they certainly are taking direction from him and looking to him as a weather vane.
Right. I mean,
in a way that I
he's
think
a
that the
prominent
left
name.
isn't doing for Biden.
Yeah, and I think there's that speaks to party loyalty, I think, more.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just say, okay, let's say median income, which this would put this would include about 12, looking at some of the statistics, 12 to 15% of families make this range, $75 to $100,000.
Yeah.
Four person family, $75 to $100,000. That is 12% of the United States. If you want to include the 50 to 74,000 range, which is, I think, a good median, we're looking at close to 30%. So a third of all Americans are in this range. But
Okay.
$75 to $100,000, which is a good income in most states. What would you like to see as an effective tax rate? Their overall tax burden for a family of four.
This is the other problem that I have with your question. I have no idea.
Okay. All right. And that's fine, right? I'm just curious. It was a thought I had while we were talking about this because I think it should be fairly
I wish
low.
I did have an idea, but I have no idea what I would answer to that. And I think rightfully shouldn't have an answer to that.
I'm not a tax expert by any means, but I do teach history, and historically speaking, when taxes are lower, economic times for individuals are better. Now that's when taxes on individuals are lower. Taxes were fairly low on individuals in the early 1910s and 20s, but we had very low corporate taxes, and we had the whole reason the Citizens United case had issues came up was because of corporate cronyism and things like that.
Yeah.
However, all of that aside, looking just at individual taxes right now, I would like to see it lower than 10%. I think you should your tax burden, I think, should be around or less than 10%.
Yeah. I think that I feel like you're looking at it from much too much of a bird's eye view. Because I think it's easy and it's popular to say like, oh yeah, we should lower taxes, but lower them for whom? It's unpopular to say that we should raise taxes, but rarely do people want to listen to, who we're planning on raising taxes for. And so I mean, fair. I would agree I would agree that for, the lower and middle class, sure, let's give them a 10% tax rate. But in order to do that, we still have to fund the things that we need to fund, public school, regulatory agencies that, even though I know you aren't as much of a fan of those, we do kind of still need them. Going back to you bringing up the 1910s and the 1920s, I would rather not have, people smoking cigarettes and rats running across the conveyor belt in the factory that's canning my tuna.
Sure.
So we do need things like the FDA, the USDA. Yes, they can sometimes be nanny states, but they're important. But I also think that, maybe tax rate isn't the best way to determine it. Maybe it's something like I think Elizabeth Warren has advocated for, where that first dollar that you make after $999,999,999, every single bit of that is contributed to taxes, because at that point you have absolutely everything that you need. And it wouldn't necessarily include your business assets. There would have to be some protections to protect your business assets and things that, you can, that aren't necessarily liquid, while also making sure that you're not just, keeping all of your assets from being liquid in order to evade it.
Here's the problem with that. It completely eliminates drive after that certain amount of money.
I don't think it does.
Oh, it 100% does. Think of it like this. You've watched The Office, right?
Sure.
So there's the whole part of the series where Jim realizes there's no cap on sales.
Right.
And that's why he decides not to take a management position, because he can make more money as a salesman than he can as a manager. But
Right.
then they put a cap on sales, and he has no reason to work anymore because he's already met that cap.
Right.
So, and then what does he do? He spends time not doing anything because he cannot make any more money. He physically is not able to make any more. So why even try? And
you're absolutely right. And I think that that is actually an accurate depiction of, you know, a real world scenario. Here's the thing that I don't think you're considering. That is a mid-level manager at a paper company making, I'm guessing for the time, probably like 60 to 70,000 tops as a salesman. Not somebody who has, again, 900 million,
999,999.
$1 less than $1 billion. And I don't think that it removes drive, because first of all, it takes an incredible amount of drive to even get to that point. And I think once you're at that point, like having that much money in some ways removes any incentive to make more money, because you can't possibly need it. And yet you still have, you know, people who are multi-billionaires who are accruing more and more money that they can never use.
So,
and they're being driven by something, and it's not their need for that money.
There are two misconceptions here that I hear from both sides of the political spectrum, but more so from Democrats. And it's, in order for what your argument is making to work, it depends on this being liquid assets, cash on hand.
No, that's why I'm saying that there has to be some kind of, like, we have to address that. I have no idea what that would look like, but I'm acknowledging that that is a flaw in that plan, because, and very easy to find a loophole to.
Here's the problem: is people are driven by two things, right? Self-improvement or self-service. And the people who make it further in life, the people who are happier with their life, are the people who are motivated by self-improvement. And the people who are more financially successful in life are motivated by self-service.
I could have a whole episode on why I disagree with both of those statements.
We'll say that it's a blanket term, and there are exceptions to the rule.
I think those are the same thing.
I disagree.
I would lump your
two
types of people into my, like, one of my groups in a dichotomy.
But I would say one is focused on the increase of money and one is focused on the increase of character.
Okay. I would be more willing to buy into that.
So I see self-improvement as increase of character and self-service as the increase of finances. And
okay. I frequently think, just personally, I think that there is a lot of quote unquote self-improvement that is very much not improving character.
Sure. But in this sense, let's leave it to that. And I think, by and large, the majority of people in society, the majority of individuals, are people who are a mixture of both, but are primarily self-improving, right? If you talk to any person on the street, the vast, vast majority of people are saying, I just want to have a good life. I want to have a good family. I want to be happy. And the people who are self-serving are ones who either say, my route to happiness is through financial success, or I want to have loads of money. And I do not see a problem with leveraging through small amounts of government regulation those self-serving people to benefit everybody else through taxes. But I do think that if you don't do it correctly, the self-serving people will go somewhere else where they can continue to be self-serving. Or they will find a way to stay here and continue to be self-serving. If you put a maximum...
but they're going to do that anyway.
And so if they're going
to... They're already doing that.
So if they're already doing that, then why not make it easier for them to make a higher amount of money, knowing you're still going to take a decent chunk of it, instead of cap it?
Because what we're doing right now is not working.
I'm not saying that what we're doing right now is working. I'm not. What I'm saying is your solution of capping wherever that cap is, high or low, but even if it's super high, that cap is going to have a negative ripple effect. And I know that because we have seen that cap have a negative ripple effect in history before. But we also
haven't seen it with these circumstances. And also, I think you're massively overestimating the gross negative ripple effect and not the net.
Joseph Stalin's net worth, accounting for inflation, would be approximately $7.5 trillion.
Right.
So
he was a incredibly horrible, despotic dictator.
Absolutely.
I'm not advocating for that. I would just like to be able to break my arm and not go bankrupt.
Sure. However, a system in which you get rid of competition pushes those people who are greedy.
We're not getting rid of competition.
Yeah, but you would. If you put a cap on income, you're getting rid of competition.
We're not.
And all that would do, you literally said a cap. You literally said 100% of everything you make past this amount.
We're not putting a cap on competition.
That's
on incentives.
Okay, but
we're putting a cap on the amount of money one person can be paid in a year.
Sure.
And I mean, that's and again, that was only an example. I think I started the whole argument off by saying this is not. I'm just using this for reference.
Yeah, you brought up Elizabeth Warren,
and I think you're missing the point of what I'm saying is that I think at a certain point, once you've made enough and you're good, it is only right and fair that any extra you have that you don't need to maintain this lifestyle that you would like to live and maybe did earn, because there's certainly, I mean, there are people who are rich enough where a significant decrease in their yearly earnings.
No, I understand.
They'd still be able to maintain.
I understand everything you're saying.
Let's use that money for the people who maybe don't have as much, or ideally, in my personal view, maybe let's prioritize the people who don't have as much rather than the hypothetical ability for these people to get so rich.
So, but And I understand all of that. I'm not misunderstanding when you say that. I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying, in that all that's going to do is drive those people to find their greed somewhere else. And historically speaking, that has driven those people into positions of power that are scary or that do not change the outcome. And instead, you may as well improve slightly upon the system that we have to close some of the issues that are not functioning properly and have a higher amount of revenue for those programs you are describing.
I mean, that's what I'm saying too. I'm just saying it from the opposite side.
Yes, I'm saying you can drive competition to increase that revenue and have those programs.
No, because we've been driving competition. What we haven't done is had that reasonable amount of socialist oversight to keep it in check.
Okay. This is going to quickly, if it hasn't already, devolve more into an argument about economic philosophy, which
I thought that's what the whole point of this episode was.
No, yeah, but we were trying to focus on just taxes, and now we're down to like socialism versus capitalism, and I could open up a whole other can of, because this is what I studied for my master's degree in large part. My master's degree was on the history of specifically communist Poland.
Right.
But with that comes the study of Marxist theory, the study of communism or socialism implemented in surrounding, similar, differing, and further away countries. Like, I'm not going to say that I'm an expert on communism. There are people who know a lot more than me. But I have, if we're going to get into a discussion that is more about the issues between socialism and capitalism, as opposed to taxation taking the form of socialism and capitalism, or driving a pseudo-socialist, capitalist, mixed economy state, I'm going to need a lot more time.
That's fair.
Let's call it good. Let's end it here. Yeah. You've got a fun fact for us. I'm so tired.
Yeah, well, first, this one really got away from us.
Oh,
so
my
if you are still listening, our first thank you is to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Our second thank you is to Halcyon Club for letting us use their song "This Life Is Tough But Fair" from their EP Headset Emotions. You can find them on Spotify. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, or anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And my fun fact... I remember it now. My fun fact is that all birds are literal dinosaurs.
Well, not literal, but descendants of.
No.
Are they literal?
No. They are literally, currently, right now, dinosaurs.
Huh.